France, first win in Australia in 31 years, which is madness. They came ever so close last week. This week it was not much more comfortable, but they managed to get the result that they were looking for. The series is now tied 1 game apiece. We've just watched the game. We'll go through the key events, some of the stats, and yeah, you guys can have any thoughts on how this one went. Like I mentioned, 28 points to 26. 2 tries to the Wallabies, 1 to France. Very much a case of this French side taking the points on offer, especially in the first half when they were kind of under the pump, at least in terms of lacking a bit of ball. They were quite happy to keep the scoreboard ticking over whenever they got opportunities, and the Wallabies may be a bit guilty of missing some opportunities of their own. They got the first penalty of the game, did France, within a minute to make it 3 points to 0. Corabetti, who was phenomenal in this game and was denied twice tries, he showed some absolute wheels on 6 minutes when he got the ball, ran a crazy, fast, magnificent angle. I don't know what else to talk about it, to say about it. And he goes over for a try where he made the French outside back, I think it was Pinot and Jaminet, both missed him. He made them look pretty flat-footed. And that try gets chalked off because there's a knock-on from Tom Wright way back when Australia were receiving a kick from the French. That's what generated the opportunity for Marika to have a run. So Wright gets a knock-on, which means that the resulting try is chalked off. And a few minutes later, Dante has a big run, as he's like to do, runs at Lolosio. Lolosio does well to bring him down, but Gordon is offside at the ruck, and then it's 6 points to 0 because France opt to take the 3. So France haven't had a heck of a lot of time down Australia's end, but when they have gone down there, they took points with them. 14 minutes, I wrote that the Wallabies' execution was just not quite there. Banks got it to Corabetti, and then there was a knock-on. A minute later, it looked like they had finally got the execution thing sorted when Corabetti went over for a second try, seemingly. Tamua with a real long cutout ball to Corabetti and a really athletic dive over the try line. But the Tamua pass, that was the cutout ball, was forward. So it's 2 try scoring opportunities, which the Wallabies failed to convert. To be fair, the first one was just, they wouldn't have even had that opportunity had they picked up the knock-on in the first instance. They did go back for an advantage, though, for the second one, and the Wallabies decided to take the 3, so it's a 3-point ball game, 6 points to 3. 17 minutes, Marika Corabetti has a huge run again, this time from the restart. Australia go through some phases, but they give away a dumb penalty when Lucan Salakaia-Loto pushes one of the French players off the ball, so it's really silly stuff. And then on 21 minutes, Damien Pinot gets the only try of the game for the French. It was another crazy one. It's from turnover ball. France go like 9 phases. The Wallabies get turnover ball. Banks runs it out of his own 22. They look to be getting some go forward. They turn the ball over. France counter-attack, the Aussie counter-attack. So it's like a double counter. And I think it's Woki plays a little 1-2 with Pinot. And Pinot goes over for the try. It's 13 points to 3. 10-point ball game. The numbers are falling off the back of the French jerseys, which is not a great look. It's kind of hard to see who's who from a distance, but I'm sure they'll fix that for the next game. 25 minutes, France concede a penalty for a high tackle. That one where they're trying to go for a choke tackle to get a maul turnover, but it's a little bit high, so they let the Aussies back into it with that one, so it's 6 points to 13. Tamua, who at times I thought had a bit of a mare in this game, he knocks it on his own 22. It's a real shaky head moment and leads to a big French attack, which leads to advantage, which leads to a penalty. So it's back to a 10-point ball game, 16 points to 6. Right from the restart, France make a mistake. They muck up the restart, which allows Australia to have another chance. Australia, they kick for touch when they have a penalty. They maul it. They get advantage. They go for touch again. They maul it. They go through phases. And they score one of the weirdest tries you will see. Because you got Taniela Tupou in there at the base of the ruck. And what do forwards do whenever at the base of the ruck? They just hit the guy who's the one-off runner from the closest possible distance to the ruck, right? Every forward who stands in at scrum half pretty much does that. Tupou, though, he flings a long cutout ball out to the left wing where Jake Gordon, who's the guy who's supposed to be doing that job, is standing, and he's standing unopposed. He goes over for a try. Much needed try for the Wallabies right before half-time. And then Lolosio with a great conversion to make it a 3-point ball game at half-time. It's 16 points to 13. Crazy game, man. Possession 66-34. Territory 71-29 to the Wallabies in that first half. So they've had all this possession and territory, but they've had 3 knock-ons to 1. They've generated more run meters, 292 to 123. Both sides are tackling in the 90s, so each side's only conceded 1 penalty. But the French have had to do a lot more work, 115 tackles to 43. So you got to wonder, are the French guys going to tire in the second half having to make all these tackles, which is, a lot harder work than having to truck the ball up. Second half, France get turned over by Michael Hooper pretty much straight down there, straight from the kickoff, and then they're down the other end with the Wallabies going through phases within a flash. So it's from their own kind of mistake. They get in all kinds of trouble, and then it's 16 points apiece because the Wallabies slot a penalty. So that's proper game on, man. The Wallabies at one point in that first half, they're down 13-3. It's a 10-point game. They're down 16-6. So credit to them for bringing it back to an all-square game. France, though, take it back in front on 50 minutes when they get a scrum penalty. The scrum did kind of go back and forth in this one, but it has a key moment at the end. So it's 19-16. 54 minutes, Jaminet on the counter. There's a high ball. He gets a big old line break. It's kind of similar to Korobeti's run from earlier. The French go through 11 phases. They get advantage. They tap it. They go close. Ever so close. Taufifenua is like, if he had fingers which were just slightly longer, he would have been able to touch the ball down, but he ends up knocking it over the line, and they ended up going back for advantage. They opt for 3 points, so it's 22 points to 16, trying to take it beyond the Wallabies. The Wallabies have a 5-meter line out, attacking chance. They lose the bloody thing. Villiers and Carbonell with a big line break to counter. They turn defense into attack. They get advantage, and France opt for 3 points. So it's 25-16. It's starting to look like, man, with 20 minutes to go, the Wallabies executing the way they are, this is just going to be too hard. You can't see them scoring twice in the final kind of 20 minutes. That being said, 67 minutes, Australia, they maul it. They get driven into touch. The French guys are pumped. You're thinking it's game over. They exit to the 22. Australia lose their line out again. But Australia managed to make it game on 70 minutes through Michael Hooper. It's Tom Banks with a line break. Again, it's kind of like, first it was Korobeti, then it was Jaminet, and now it's Banks. Like, just from midfield runs, inside balls, these guys are able to get these line breaks. Yeah, it's Callaway who's running a support line. They did have the TMO check it because Banks' pass to Callaway looks to have gone forward, but it's backwards off a French hand. Hooper is the guy there who's running a great support line. He scores the try over in the corner, and again, talk about nerves of steel. Lolosio with a great conversion, 25 points to 23. Now it's game on. The Aussies have got 10 minutes to get things sorted out. Girassi, the replacement lock, also goes off, and there's no forwards left on the bench for France. So Bouthier, the fullback, has to come on. So maybe France are looking a little bit vulnerable. 73 minutes, France are under the pump. The Aussies are absolutely fired up. You're wondering, where has this Aussie team been for the previous 60, 70 minutes? But maybe it is the French guys starting to get a bit tired after that huge defensive effort. There's a penalty that they win. The Aussies, they had advantage, but they go back for a penalty. And Lolosio's got a long penalty shot to take, like 40 metres with a slight angle. And he nails it. It looks like the Aussies are going to steal this. Not steal it, but they're going to get back in front the same way they did last week, kind of edge it at the death after being behind for so long. But there's a knock-on from the restart, which leads to a scrum. And wouldn't you know, the French pack absolutely monsters the Wallabies at scrum time. There's a big kick for Jaminet. It's pretty much straight out in front, 30 odd meters. It's a kick he should be getting 99 times out of 100, and he doesn't make any mistakes. 28 points to 26. The French are back in front. They've only got to see out the remainder of the game. The Wallabies do have a final chance to attack, but eventually they get penalised at the breakdown. The French run the clock down, tap it, and kick the damn thing out. So the 31-year drought is over for France. The series is still alive. It's 1 apiece. Whatever happens, I think both of these sides are going to be good. Having played this game in a couple of years, where you've got these young guys like Jamini, I think is 22, a lot of CEOs in his early 20s, making these kicks, these pressure kicks in pressure conditions. A lot of young men on both sides that, with a couple more years' experience, will be key members of World Cup squads. Possession finishes 63-37, territory 64-36, so it's still pretty dominant for Australia, but it wasn't as lopsided in the second half. Turnovers conceded for Australia is the losing of the game. It's 12-6. Of which 8 of them are breakdown wins for the French. Their breakdown work was just phenomenal. The Aussies couldn't keep their own ball. They won the 1 turnover according to the stats, which was Hooper. Lineouts likewise, 7 from 10 for the Wallabies is not great. 6 from 8 for the French is also not great. But some key ones for the Wallabies went astray. I mean, positively, both sides are tackled at 90%, which is a great effort for a test match. 228 tackles for the French, 122 for the Wallabies. So there were some tired legs on that French side. You look at the individual efforts. Diallo makes 23 out of 24. Vincent, 25 out of 27. Cazot, 20 out of 22. Jalon, 23 out of 24. There's a heap of guys who made 20 or more tackles, which is a huge shift. Salakai Loto for the Wallabies made 16 out of 16, so he was their top guy. The offensive stats, Korobidi, oh my goodness, man, 181 run meters, 7 defenders beaten. How he didn't get on the scoreboard is absolute madness. Barlow, the hooker for France, was a pretty big unit as well. The lineout wasn't perfect, but he made 27 run meters himself. Wilkie made like 60. He was everywhere, Wilkie, so great effort from him. 31 years, man. The French guys celebrated pretty happily at the end of this game, and I kind of don't blame them because they earned a victory. They would have been gutted last week, but they turned it around and yeah, put in a good shift. So yep, we've got 1 game to go. It's on Saturday. It's a 4-day turnaround, so expect to see much changed lineups for the next game. I am absolutely looking forward to it. As much as you can see the British and Irish Lions hammer the Sharks by 70 points and England over Canada and whatnot with 70 points. 28-26, a 3-try game. Crack and watch. I look forward to seeing more of it. You guys have any thoughts? How do you think the game went? And yeah, I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.